Hi, this is Kevin Trainer. Welcome to my tutorial on proposing a technical architecture. This is meant as a tutorial to help you work on your skills practice exercise called technical architecture. And of course, that's a practice for writing the technical architecture section of your proposed solution document, the last of the hand-ins for the course. The instructions for those two assignments are nearly identical. And what I have up in front of us here are the instructions for skills practice technical architecture. And even though I am going to encourage you to create an outline as the first step of your process, our eventual goal is a written report with full sentences and paragraphs and written in professional business prose. Okay? So even though I'm going to encourage you to write an outline along the way, that's not what you hand in. Okay, so what's this thing that we hand in supposed to be about? Well, the required outline, the major heading is a technical architecture with two subheadings, choice of architecture and the rationale for choice of architecture. And I think they're pretty self-explanatory. So I have given you some notes on the kinds of details that I'd like to see about your choice of architecture. And depending upon your particular case, your circumstances might require you to have maybe other dimensions to your architecture. So you don't have to take this as a limit to what you can talk about, but as a recommended list of issues to cover. So first of all, you'll see here we have multi-user versus single user. It's not unusual for us to meet our users when they only have a single user. So somebody will come to us with a modest size requirement and will say, well, how many people are doing this? And they will say, well, just Mary. It's only done by Mary. And so then you start thinking, well, geez, I could do this with single user tools. But the fact is, unless you can really prove that this thing is always going to only have one user, because it's very hard to convert from single user oriented tools to multi-user oriented tools, I'm going to want you to really provide a justification if you pick a single user tool. Okay? Now, the next issue, desktop versus web-based. Now, by desktop, I mean the kind of application programs that run directly on the operating system of a PC. So typically the PCs that we use these days run either Windows or Mac OS. And there are desktop PCs that run Linux, but not a whole lot of them. Okay, and then the kind of programming languages that those kinds of applications would be written in would be in Windows. It would be let's see, Visual Basic, C#, those kinds of things. In C++, for instance. If it were Mac, it might be either Objective-C or Swift. Okay? And if it were either Windows or Mac, it could be a Java application that would be a little more portable to both of them. Okay? in any case, we'd be talking about a dedicated application that runs on one computer at a time on the client. But compared to web-based, which would be you would have typically on the client, you would have a browser that would be running on Windows or Mac OS or Linux, if that's what you have on your client machines. And then the application itself would be in a web server and application server back on the server. Okay. Most of the things you've learned how to do at SOAS are web-based. Okay. So typically, if you're going to say this is a desktop application, I'm going to want to know why, because that's a little different. So when if it's going to be web-based, we're going to assume that it's going to be able to run on a PC that's on the desktop or a laptop. Okay. What about mobile support? Okay. So there are a couple of options. One is they can say, well, we don't have any need for mobile support. You don't get a lot of that anymore because people like to work on the run. If you're going to have mobile support, then we're going to know, well, what kind of devices is it going to run on? And is it going to run in the browser, or are you going to write a custom app? And if you're going to write a custom app, I know that's a nice idea, but how are you going to justify that? How's that going to be different than having a responsive app that runs in the browser? Okay. The data store. Okay, the data store we teach about here at SOAS is the relational database management system. In particular, we learn MySQL in most of the classes. So is that how you're going to store your data, or are you going to store your data some other way? Okay. There are a bunch of things associated with maybe the Google platform or the Amazon platform or something like that that might allow you to store your data in the cloud somewhere. All kinds of possibilities. So what are you going to use for your data store? And if it's not a relational database, then we're eventually going to know what your rationale was, because it's kind of relational databases are kind of in the mainstream of the technology we talk about here at SOAS. And then we're going to want what I call a recommended technology stack. Now, the technology stack that we have here at SOAS is LAMP. It's on the server. It's the Linux operating system L. It's the Apache HTTP server. That's A. It's the MySQL relational database management system. That's M, and it's PHP for the application programming. That's the P. So what you've been learning in your program at SOAS is LAMP. Well, there are at least two other very popular technology stacks. One from the Java world called JEE, and one called .NET from the Microsoft world. And there are, let's say there are technology stacks that are close to LAMP but don't use, say, PHP and that kind of stuff. So it would be interesting to see what you're recommending. The rationale for the choice of architecture is this. I don't want you to be picking an architecture out of the blue because you like it. I want you to be picking it because it meets the functional requirements and the non-functional requirements that we documented in all the work we've done in our systems analysis. So what I'm going to want you to do is to give some general information about why you think this is an appropriate choice of technologies, but I'm going to want you to tie it back as much as you possibly can to things that you said or would have been said in the functional requirements and the non-functional requirements in your systems analysis document. Okay, so that's what we're trying to do. So one of the first things I do is I go and read my systems analysis document. Okay, now I don't have one that's all put together for the project that I've been using as my most recent example project is this student attendance system. So I just went back and read through all the example documents I put together for student attendance, including all those things that make up functional specifications and all those things that make up non-functional specifications. And I tried to come up with an outline for what I was going to write, eventually turn into prose for technical architecture. So again, I've got two major, I've got the major heading technical architecture, and under that two minor headings, choice of architecture, rationale for choice of architecture. And here's what I decided I was going to do. I was going to have a multi-user system, web-based, okay. And now it doesn't specifically here say that it has browser-based clients. That's sort of implied, but you'll see when I do the writing, I kind of beef this up a bit. The mobile support that it's going to get is browser-based using a responsive web app. Okay, it's not going to get any dedicated mobile app coding. The data store is going to be a relational database. Okay, I'm not going to do anything any fancier than we've been doing as our standard stuff in the SOAS program. And the technology stack is going to be a little bit different from the technology stack that we teach at SOAS, because I'm a Java guy and I'm going to build this thing. Okay, so I've decided that we're going to use Linux servers, we're going to use an Apache HTTP server, a JEE application server, namely Tomcat, because that's free, and MySQL. And you'll see when I write this up, I'm a little more specific about this. I say MySQL Community Edition. So you see that when I'm going from this outline to really writing it up, I'm being a little bit more detailed in the write-ups. Okay? So then I go through and I just come up with rationale for all of the choices. And my idea here is I just want to get the ideas out. I'm not saying that I'm going to answer these as an outline. Okay? But what I am going to do is I'm going to use the outline in order to support, say, the paragraphing and the thinking that I do. So what's the argument for the multi-user system? Well, I look back through my non-functional requirements, and we had 70 simultaneous student users, 5 simultaneous instructor users, okay? And we also had a bunch of use cases that looked like they would be going on perhaps at the same time in the classroom. So I thought, wow, multi-user system, that makes a lot of sense. Then I decided it was going to be browser-based web application. So it's not going to be a desktop app. It's not going to be a native app that runs under the operating system. It's going to be a web app that runs in a browser on the client. Okay? And what are the things that I put in here? This system should be usable by students in the classroom, on the lab machines, student laptops, or student mobile devices. Okay, so if it was web-based, that would certainly work. And it avoids costly specialized hardware and software in the classroom. Okay, we want to use kind of standard stuff. Okay. On the mobile side, I just want browser-based mobile support. So here are my thoughts here. Mobile support is important to allow students to use their own devices. The use case specifications indicate normal web app functionality and workflows. When you look at the use cases I did for this app, it looks like something that's going to just be your basic browser-based web app. I do want it to be easy for students to use in the classroom on their mobile devices, so I do want a responsive web design. And I don't have any obvious justification for developing a dedicated mobile app. The data store is a relational database. And here are a couple of thoughts I had here. The conceptual data model, that's the requirement, can easily be implemented in an RDBMS. Normal RDBMS features of transactions, logging, commit, rollback, backup, and restore functionality are essential to meeting the non-functional requirements of reliability and recoverability. And the typical RDBMS security features are things that we're going to want to keep our data secure. And then down on the overall technology stack, Linux servers are affordable and widely available, including available at SOAS. The Apache HTTP server, the same thing's true. The JEE application server, there's the Tomcat open source free version that's widely available at internet service providers, but not at SOAS. So if I wanted to host this at SOAS, I'd have to get them to start to support it. There are non-functional requirements that include a preference for Java-based tools. So I'm going to want to talk about that. The JEE application server has good security features right out of the box, so I'd like to talk about that. MySQL Community Edition is free and is going to meet the functional and the non-functional requirements. It's widely available, including at SOAS. And the non-functional requirements include a preference for MySQL. So we have all those. So what I've tried to do is to do my thinking before I do my professional writing. So where do I go from a next step? Well, I just, to tell you the truth, I usually make a copy of the document, right? And then I crowd out the outline and I start to write on top of it, right? And then when I need to refer to the outline, I just scroll down. I just go, oh yeah, what was in the outline there? And I pull down and I go, oh yeah. I'm going to go back to writing. And then when I get done, I go, did I cover all those points in the outline? It looks like I did. Then I delete the outline portion and I leave the written prose. So that's how I do it in Microsoft Word. So I did that just a little while ago, actually. So I took this outline and I turned it into this report. And as you can see, it's got the major heading, technical architecture, minor headings, choice of architecture, rationale for choice of architecture. And what I would encourage you to do is just to read through this and compare it to the outline and realize I thought of some additional things when I was doing the writing. Well, I didn't have to go back and change my outline. The outline is just a tool. It's just sort of a crutch to come up with better writing. Okay. I allowed myself to have a list when I went through the technology stack. Okay. But I don't have just, it's not just a series of bulleted lists. So I think that it's within the rules that I have for what is a business-oriented professional prose. It can have a list, either bulleted or numbered, but it has to be more than just an outline. So could I further improve this? Yeah, I probably, as I was talking through this just now and when we were going through the outline, I thought of one or two or three things I wish I had done a little differently. I haven't given you the perfect example, but I think it's a good example and gives you the idea of the kind of discussion that we're looking for in this technical architecture section. And I especially want to emphasize that it ties back to the requirements that we documented in the systems analysis document. So this is not a standalone. I mean, you have to read it standalone, but the thinking in it has to be compatible with the systems analysis document, both functional and non-functional requirements. And the rationale should make pretty good use of references to the requirements and why the choices that you made were done in order to meet the requirements or to be consistent with the requirements. So that's it. I'm not going to really tell you much more. For me, this came to about a page and a half, a little bit less, page and a third. Okay. And I think that's probably a pretty good length as well. Okay. So good luck with this. I'm going to say bye until next time. Bye-bye.